to meet you.
Hi, Ariana. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm very excited to talk to you because not only do we have this great melanin in common, we're both from Detroit.
Shut up. Where are you from?
I was born in Detroit and lived there until I was about 8. Then I moved to Southfield.
What school did you go? Did you go to Levy?
No, I went to Bernie and then I graduated from Southfield Lathrop.
Got it. My mom taught at Levy for many years.
Oh, that's so crazy. Worlds colliding.
I know. And then where'd you go to college?
I went to Michigan.
Oh, and then you went to Michigan.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Nice to see you.
Oh, thank you.
You have we won't talk about this, but I have another show that I created called Diarra from Detroit that you have to watch. I'm sorry, excited for you to watch, but we're just in post right now. But
please let me know about that for sure. However, Clara.
Yes, Clara
is not. She's not. She is in sunny LA, but it's the 1930s, which is kind of awkward for Black people. What is it like to shoot a period piece? And of course, it considers kind of modern times and how things are outlooked, but still realistic. And Clara and her husband and all the other Black people on the show are still very much faced with a 1930 point of view. What is it like as a Black woman to shoot that?
It's an interesting thing to modulate inside of you because there's the thing of just being Black in America. It's always awkward, like, right? It's always going to be awkward. But also in some ways, coming to California is like coming to the land of milk and honey. Like we've left the South, it could be worse. So, someone else was asking me, how do you feel about the language? Like when someone says Negro, when someone calls, when the woman says you're a beautiful Negro, like Clara doesn't even flinch in that way of like, she's not clutching her pearls that she's been called a Negro. Like that's just a part of the time. And so it really is that just kind of keep having to check in and make sure that I'm not reacting from my modern sensibilities, because it's bad, but, Clara knows what a sharecropper life it could be as well, and so there is a sense of them having the first world problems at time, right?
Yes.
But I think any moment she knows her husband cannot come home, her brother cannot come home, she cannot come home, and it hits a little different. I think we do know that as Black people, that maybe our brothers and nephews won't come home, but not in the same way that they did at that time.
Yes.
So there's a little extra stress, but it's also the best for them. It was the best time to be Black that there had been, and the best place to be Black that there was, so it's really interesting that how one wears the burden of racism at that time.
Yes. And it's funny to even think that like our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will even look back at today. Well, hopefully we'll look back at today and we'll be like, how did all of this happen? And that they're kind of looking at it in the same sense, and it's so much better for them, and so on and so forth. So that's definitely really interesting to kind of grapple with and look at. It's even mentioned when they're in that quote unquote fancier neighborhood, like Paul can't even get out the car. It's just like, okay, I can pretend that I'm a cleaner. You, according to them, have no business on being here. So it's interesting how they both have to kind of navigate and how gender can kind of come into play, and also colorism.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for Clara this time around? Like she hears kind of about his job, but this time she's like really the investigator. What was it like as you as an actor and to playing Clara to be able to be a part of that and actually kind of seeing what Paul is actually doing rather than hearing about it.
I loved it. I loved it. I think it was just such a beautiful evolution of their partnership. And I thought it was a nice way to kind of subvert the supportive wife trope. Because even up till now, I've loved their dynamic. I've loved that, he comes home and he tells her the truth. And their relationship really doesn't start to fall apart until he doesn't. So I loved that, but I thought, ooh, let's get her in the game. And so it's been, it was really nice to have that opportunity for her to get caught up, to see how he's been caught up too, because Clara's the whole time been saying, maybe not so much with the white people, maybe let's not do this. Keep your head down, and as she starts to get more and more wrapped up in it this season, she's told him, like, do your job. If Perry hired you to investigate, go investigate. And then finally, like the last step of her arc this season is for her to follow suit and to get wrapped up in it as well. And it's also interesting to see just like how we were talking about how one bore the burden of racism in the 30s and how was it different, but she could have ruined her whole life in an instant, walking into that house, and she doesn't even think about, she doesn't even imagine what she faces when she goes in there. But I think it's just really exciting to see her have the same thrill that Paul does when he's good at his job and when he gets really invested in his work.
Yeah, even though, because she witnesses an overdose, has to hide from the cops, she still grabs the letter. And it's just like, okay, she still somewhat has her wits about her and still has the goal in mind. But what was it like to shoot that overdose scene? Obviously, it isn't real, but I feel like even as an actor, if I walk in, someone has a needle in their arm and convulsing, like I'm going to have a reaction as a human being.
Yeah. It is, what I love about that moment is that she cannot do the right thing. Like her own, she has a duty to go home. She walks into that house, she has a duty to walk out and go home to her husband and her child. And so the right thing to do, and it was originally scripted that Clara would rush over to her and take the needle out of her arm and sort of help this woman. And when I read it, I had like such a visceral reaction of like, I'm not touching that white woman. Like, I'm not getting closer to that woman. I have to go home. And even as a mother and a compassionate person, she just can't do the right thing. She has to just get out of there. And that's heartbreaking in a sense, but it felt real. It felt real and honest to me. And so even though I do think that Clara feels bad for that woman, she had a duty to get home.
Yeah. The woman gave her like a semi-backhanded compliment, because I feel like even in like present day, this will happen, that a white person or a person who's non-Black would be like, oh, you look like this Black person. You're like, I don't. Like, have you never encountered another one that you're just like, you think that's sweet, but it's not. So it definitely kind of set the tone of the dynamic for sure. Mm-hmm. But we also, a sweet moment is we get to find out how Par and Clara met and how this love story started. What was it like to kind of find that out? Did you always kind of know?
No, both Chris and I, when we read that, we were like, that's not how I thought that they met. It was so, I love it because there is sometimes a tendency to sanitize Black characters, and it's like one or the other. Sometimes it's like it's awful or it's really pristine. And I thought it was I was surprised. I was like, Clara You slept with him on the first time you met him? Damn, girl. Like, but I thought it was nice because it explains so much about how these people just came together and just knew like this person is the one for me, like right out the gate. And the passion and the love that they have for each other, I think is just gorgeous. So yeah, I was surprised, and like Diarra clutched her pearls. I was like, what? But it's nice because we think about our grandparents as like people who had purse candy and went to church and watched Perry Mason. And the truth of the matter is we all got here somehow, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Really creepy to think about. Very true. But also shows with that interaction how in the relationship, she is definitely kind of the motivator and kind of one to ease things, but she is also kind of the outspoken one and is the one that kind of pushes him along to be the person that he can be and stand up for himself when necessary and when to fall back and things of that nature. So it was super cute. Clara, obviously it's 1930s and she dresses differently than you do, I would think.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yes. What would you say is like your favorite part of her wardrobe, and what would you say is kind of the hardest, and that you're like, oh, I'm really glad I did not live during here because I didn't want to wear this or that?
You know, she took a hit. I felt the depression. I felt like the depression really wrecked her wardrobe this season. Because season 1, there was like there was a coat that she wore to church that I was like, this is fire. Like I wanted to take it with me. It had like a fur collar. And this season I felt like she was a little more in her house dresses. And I think the thing that I found the most abhorrent that she wore was actually in season 1, it was her swimming suit. It was like a sweater vest with shorts. Like I was like, this is not sexy, even remotely. This is in fact ridiculous. Like it was like, this is not a thing that would make swimming. Like I felt like if you got it wet, it would just droop. It was a swimming suit that I was like, and I was pregnant in that season, and I still was just like, this is a no-go for me. But I like the dresses and the little heels and the little hats, and it's not something, COVID has turned me into a sweatpants enthusiast like everybody else. But it is nice to have a place to sort of dress up and celebrate the femininity of that time a little bit. So, and I like what it does to me as a performer. It just kind of puts you in the time period once you're in those clothes. And yeah, I really loved it. I think they did a beautiful job.
Yes. I especially love her hats because I feel like in modern days, especially if a woman wears a hat, it's like, hey, hat, like, what are we doing today? So I love how she can just casually wear it. But it was incredible talking to you. I would love to talk to you about your other series as well. I'll reach out via social media. But thank you so much, and congrats on almost the end of season 2 and you being a regular, and more to come, obviously.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you. I love a Detroit girl. So congratulations on all you're doing. It's really nice to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You have a good one.